So good afternoon, everybody. Or I should say good morning. I guess it depends what time you're going to be watching this, but my name is Andrew Golden. I'm a Cisco teacher. I've been teaching Cisco at LaSalle College for 22 years, give or take. I have the pleasure today of talking to you guys about Gns3. Gns3 is a simulation software that we can use to simulate a network. In fact, what is really nice about Gns3 is that we're actually going to be using Cisco IOS, so they're operating the real operating system of Cisco. If you've taken courses with me before, or if you've heard me talk before, you've heard me talk about Packet Tracer. Packet Tracer is a great program from Cisco, free for all our NetAcad students. So anybody who's registered, and of course, sometimes you can find stuff for free on the internet. But that being said, Packet Tracer has its limitations, and so one of the limitations of Packet Tracer is the fact that it only does what it's been programmed to do. It doesn't actually use a real operating system, and so when you're executing commands in a router or a switch, it's actually just a program running in the background. There's no actual operating system running. So we prefer to use something else like Gns3. A bunch of nice things about Gns3. One of them is that it's open source. Again, if you've ever been with me in a classroom or in a conference or anywhere, you'll know that I much prefer open source software to proprietary software. But so that's one of the nice things about Gns3. As I said, it runs on a real operating system, and so we enjoy a real operating system more than a simulated operating system. It can run other equipment as well. I've been playing around with Juniper routers in my Gns3. I haven't got them working exactly the way I want them to, but I will eventually. Again, with an open source project, it's a little bit of guesswork, a little bit of legwork, looking around in the forums to see what some of the problems might be. And so one of the other nice things about Gns3 is being able to add, if you've taken the CCNA security course with us, it's nice to add a security server, and so we can add a security server in there as well, and we like that. So a bunch of different things we can do with Gns3. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you guys, and here we go. And I'll just walk you through the installation of Gns3. It's a pretty straightforward process. It's not that difficult. And then it can be a little bit buggy, to be honest with you. And then after that, I'll just do a little demonstration. I'll bring up some equipment, do some configs, and just show you, some of the things that Gns3 can do. And of course, if you ever have any questions, by all means, you can send me a mail if you're a student. And if not, andrew.golden@collegelasalle.com. By all means, send me your questions or comments, and I'd be happy to interact with you that way. Okay, so we head over to the Gns3 website. It's a free website to use. You are going to have to register, so you have to sign in. Once you sign in, you hit that free download, and there's the latest version 2.2.16. It just came out actually this weekend. Today is the 9th of November. And so this came out this weekend. So be careful if you have Gns3 already running properly on your computer. You might not want to upgrade right away. You're going to lose any projects that you did in a previous version. So that's one of the things you got to be careful with Gns3. So download this version for Windows, this version for Mac, this version for Linux, and you're good to go. And then you're probably going to want to get the VM that goes with it. You can run Gns3 locally on your computer, but you're going to be limited to the equipment that you can add to it. And so because most of us are already familiar with VMs, you need to go over to the download, and then you have all these options. And so I'm running a Windows machine. And again, for those of you that have been in class with me, you're going to be shocked. Yes, I'm running a Windows machine because I'm a Mac user. I played around with my Mac and finally got it working. Now we've been working on this since March, right? When confinement and COVID started, we had to come up with another solution, seeing as we couldn't get into the classroom anymore. And so this was the solution we came up with for our CCNP courses, and I could not, for the life of me, get it working on my poor Mac. And believe it or not, say 2 weeks ago, I actually got it working. So it does work okay in Mac as well. And so VirtualBox, VMware Workstation, or Hyper-V if you're lucky enough, And so you're going to need to download those files. And so you download those files, get them on your computer. You probably already have VMware Workstation running or VirtualBox running. And so at that point, you need to install your Gns3. So I'm just going to show you a couple little things in the installation. I'm not going to go through it all. It really is a Windows program. So next. Make sure you install everything in the default directories. It'll help you later on whenever we're adding anything to it. So I'm just going to start this up. And of course, I'm going to agree. And so here we get to the first spot where you got to make a couple of decisions. One is, do you want the web client or not? So there is a web client that comes with Gns3. And so it opens up, for me, it opens up Chrome, but whatever web browser you're using. And originally, it was kind of a neat way to set up your Gns3 project, so to create your topology. But it's kind of lost its luster a little bit. But if you want to install it, of course you can. And then the last one is the Gns3 Vm. And so if you click on the Gns3 Vm, it's going to actually download the Gns3 Vm for you. Now, on the web page previously, I showed you where to download it. So if you've done that already, no need to do that here. Okay. And then after that, it really is a next. It's going to add a couple of add-on programs like Wireshark, for instance. And so, I mean, I think you should be using Wireshark. So by all means, go ahead and download it. And so go through the installation. Like I said, it really is a next kind of thing. And so I'm just going to quit this installation. If you downloaded the VM like I did, then you're going to have to import it, right? So I'm running VMware Workstation, the personal license free edition. I don't need to run a whole bunch of VMs. I'm only running the VM for Gns3. And so if you get the personal license for VMware Workstation, you're allowed to install one VM. And so that's what I did. And then you're going to see a couple of other files in here. So there's the VMware player as well. And so there's a couple of other files in there. So this is a 7200 series router. This is the router in the operating system that we found does everything that we need it to do for our CCNA and our CCNP courses. So that's one little piece. And the other piece is these two files here. This is going to give us a layer 3 switch. And so we're going to install a layer 3 switch. And again, it's going to allow us to do everything we need to do for our CCNA and also for our CCNP courses. Okay, so those are the files you're going to need. Now the 7200 series and the layer 3 switch are a little bit more difficult to find. And so again, if you want to play around with this, reach out to me and I'll be happy to share those files with you. And so, yeah, then we get going. And so I'm going to open up my Gns3. It's going to open up my VM in the background, and I'll bring it up in just 1 second. And so here's the Gns3 regular platform. Let's get it up and running here. And I'll just wait patiently or not. There we go. So there's my local server starting up. We're going to create a project. So let's call this project Gns3 demo. There we go. And as you can see over here, on this side, my Gns3 VM, the light is still gray. I'm waiting for my Gns VM to start up. So there it is. And it'll take a couple of seconds to get going. Once it gets going, it works well. As we wait for this to start up, today again is the 9th of November and it's about 17 or 18 degrees outside. Has this been great weather lately or what? I was able to golf this weekend, so it was a good thing. It's the latest I've ever golfed in a season in Montreal anyway. Okay, so there's my Gns3, nothing else to do with it, with my VM, excuse me, nothing else to do with it. Up and running, good to go. Okay, so we're gonna start a new project. Or you know what, before we do, let's get into the preferences a little bit first. So edit preferences, let me just, I went a little quick there, so edit preferences. And so if you've downloaded the VM and you've imported it into your VirtualBox or VMware Workstation, whatever you're doing, you're going to need to attach it, so to speak, to Gns3. And so by default, it's not enabled, so you will enable it. And then once you're here, you pick whatever it is you're using. Again, I'm using VMware Workstation. The name of the VM is there, the port that it's running. I leave all the RAMs to the default. There is a project course with our networking course at LaSalle College, and it's going to be a little bit intensive, but so far so good. I've got about 10 routers and 4 or 5 layer 3 switches running in it right now. It seems to be running really well. And then of course, stop the Gns3 VM. So all that's going to do this down here is it's going to turn off your VM when you close Gns3. And so that's one of the things you want to do. As far as the adding the routers, so it's already here, but I'll go through it anyway. So it's going to be a new iOS router. You're going to run the iOS router in Gns3 in the VM itself. You're not going to run it locally again. So don't forget, you can run it in the VM, or you can run it locally. You prefer to run it. You prefer to run it in the VM, for me anyway. And I have this existing image. So if it was a new image, you'd browse and find it. So if I just browse over to where it is, and there it is, and I just open it up. And so there it is, and it's going to import it. And what do we want to call it? I'm going to call it C7200. I'm going to add an A to the end because I already have a C7200 running in my Gns3. How much RAM do we want to use? It's asking for 512 megs. It's good to go. And then we get to our slots. And so if you're familiar with Cisco equipment, you can add interfaces to routers. And so right now, this router has one fast Ethernet interface. It's not going to be enough to get done what you need to get done. And so we're going to add some stuff to the other slots. So this is a Giga Ethernet interface. You can add a bunch of them if you want. The PA4T is a serial interface, so to connect routers to other routers. And so I'm just going to leave it like that because I'm actually not going to complete this this particular installation. And then it wants us to finish, and you will, and you'll end up with a 7200 series router. A little bit different for our layer 3 switch. And so for our layer 3 switch, it's a Gns3 Vm. Notice there's my Juniper router, and I'm also running a AAA server, so a security server. I'm trying to get them to run. Actually, I'm having a hard time with them right now. And so there's my layer 3 switch. And again, I'm going down here to new. And so new, and I'm going to run this Gns3 in a Gns3 VM and give it whatever name you want to give it. I'm not just going to put anything in here. And then so it wants to use that binary. It wants to use that RAM. That's fine. It wants to use Telnet to get into it. That's good. An existing image or a new image. And then again, we're going to have to browse. And we're going to have to find the Cisco iOS VL2. And so I'm going to open that up. And there it is. Okay, and so you can do that as well. Again, I'm going to cancel because I really don't want to add any more equipment. Okay, so it's up and running. There's going to be some issues. I have one student running Windows that cannot get this Gns3 VM to run with his Gns3. We played with it for hours. Again, this is an open source software, so get onto the forums. I was looking, he was looking. The solution for him, believe it or not, he's going to run it in a Mac. We've run out of time. He needs to get some labs submitted to get all his marks. And so he decided to run it through a Mac. So that was for him. But one of the things that's happened a lot is restarting the computer. People are able to put the equipment in, and then they'll try to, and I'll show you in a minute or two, try to drag and drop the equipment into the space to be able to use it, into our topology to be able to use it. And it just doesn't work. And so there seems to be a little bit of this restarting the computer that's happening, and more than once. And I have some students that have to restart their computer every time they try to use Gns3 another time. And so it is a little bit buggy, and it's a bit of a pain to have to restart, but not the end of the world. I will be honest with you, my Mac never asks me to restart. Another reason to have a Mac, maybe. Okay, so here's all the equipment that I have running in my Gns3. So I'm going to grab a 7200 series router, and so I'm going to actually do two of them. We're going to play around a little bit with some basic configs and some routing protocols as well. To that, I'm going to add my layer 3 switches. So I'm going to add 2 layer 3 switches as well. And then I'm just going to add a couple of PCs down here. Which server do I want to use for the PC? And I want to run this in my VM, right? So I don't want to run it locally. And the same thing over here. And so basic config that you guys have probably seen if you've taken any Cisco courses. This is a pretty straight up config. So 2 LANs and 1 WAN connection. The WAN connection will be between router 1 and router 2. Notice we have some other equipment over here on the side, right? We have an ATM switch. We have a cloud. We have an Ethernet hub. I don't know who uses hubs anymore. We have an Ethernet switch. We have a frame relay switch as well. Most of this is not manageable. And so the Ethernet switch, although it's nice to have an Ethernet switch, you can't actually manage it. It's only there to make a connection for you. So you're not going to be able to go into it and configure your VLANs or anything else that you need to do. And so we're kind of limited in what we can do. And talking about VLANs, you know what? Let's create a couple of VLANs as well. So let me grab another PC over here. There we go. Okay, so we want to start, all this equipment needs to be started. So a bunch of different ways of doing it. Just right click and start it, but there's more than one piece of equipment. So highlight it all and just hit the start up here and it should start up. And of course, the more equipment you have in here, the longer it's going to take and the more RAM it's going to consume. There are times, original GNS3, and it's been going on for years, but original GNS3 used to suck up a lot of the performance of a computer. I'm running, I can tell you, and this is not my PC, but I can tell you that I am running a PC, as you guys can see, with an i5 processor with 8 gigs of RAM in it. So not a whole lot of RAM, and this runs well. Again, that project that I'm developing for the winter semester is has a lot of equipment in. So far, so good with my 8 gigs of RAM. But I prefer to have 16, of course. But that goes without saying. It's like saying, would you like to have fiber to the house? Of course, I'd like to have fiber to the house. And here I do. So I'm lucky enough. But I have a friend who tried to get Bell Fiber, wasn't able to get it. So that's just Bell for you. Okay, so let's connect all this stuff together. So I'm going to start with my serials, serial 40 to 40 over here. I'm going to also connect my Giga Ether to my Giga Ether here. The same, thank you, same thing over here. And now this layer 3 switch only has Giga Ethernet interfaces, and we're connecting to an Ethernet on a computer. So it's going to run at 10 megabits per second, but that's okay for a demonstration. And as far as this goes, for what we need it to do, it works just fine. Okay, so that's just setting up my topology the way I want it set up. And so you can add labels. Let me see if I can remember how to add labels. Here we go. So over here, I'm going to make this 192.168. Let's go 10.0 and a prefix of 24. And so I'm going to actually have 2 networks. And so this one is going to support VLAN 10. Let's go that way. And so that will be for this PC over here. Let's add another node over here. And so this one's going to be 192.168.20.0. There we go, 20.0. Again, with that prefix of 24 to make it easy. This one's going to support VLAN 20. Over here, I'm just going to use 192.168.30.0. Again, I'll still use that same prefix. And then up here between my routers, let's run a 10 network. So let's go 10.0.0.0. Let's do a 30-bit here. Okay. Gns3 supports IP version 6 as well. So if you're doing any IP version 6 labbing, it works really well for that too. Some of you are probably thinking, can I use this for my certifications, my CCNA, CCNP certifications? The answer is yes, you can. If you're thinking about playing with this for a CCNA security course, a little more difficult. I have not been able to get the ASA, so the Cisco firewall, to work here. It's an appliance, and you'll see as you go through GNS3, there's different appliances, and basically an appliance is somebody did the background work for you to be able to add the equipment. I have not been able to get it to work yet. And so you're not going to be able to prep your CCNA security because one of the pieces of your CCNA security is the ASA, the Adaptive Security Appliance, and it is not available for GNS3. So that's a bit of a problem. Okay, so we have it up and running, and so I'm going to just jump into the console. So again, I just right click and I go to the console. There's a bunch of stuff you can do in here as well, right? Stop, suspend, start. You could reload. Don't forget starting, restarting if you need to. You could do a custom console. You could change the host name. We're going to do that on our own. Change the symbol, duplicate, etc., etc. So there's a bunch of things you can do. I'm just going to go into the console, and it's going to open up Solar Putty. And so Solar Putty, for those of you who know Putty or Terra Terminal, so Solar Putty is a version of Putty. It's a free version, as you can see down here. It's a free tool. and it comes with the installation of Gns3. So you don't need to go and download it and install it. It's going to be installed for you. So it really is, Gns3 has become a really nice installation in that it gives you all the tools necessary at least to get going. It was not the case with original Gns3. It was a challenge to get everything up and running properly. Okay, so here we are in our first router. The router already has a name, R1. We'll leave the host name at R1 for now. Let's get in here and let's get going on the config. So just to show you a basic config, I'm going to just set up a basic IP config, and we'll use a couple of routing protocols. We'll play around with it a little bit just to show you that it's working properly. So I'm going to start by configuring my Giga Ethernet 00 interface. And again, just in case, that's the interface that I'm using. And in fact, you know what? Let me bring up the interfaces we can. Here we go. So I just clicked over here. And so here are the interfaces that we're using. Of course, it can be a little bit convoluted. Whoops, hang on a second. Nicer that way. And so my gig Ethernet 0102, but you know, like labels, it's just a label anyway. Okay, so the IP address that I'm going to give this is going to be 192.168. And of course, here I have an issue because I decided to use 2 VLANs. Yes, I did. I decided to use 2 VLANs. So I'm going to have to create some sub interfaces here. So let's create a sub interface. So interface Giga Ethernet 00. Let's go .10. And there's my sub interface that I created. So I'm going to give it an IP address. So it's going to be 192.168, and it's going to be 10.1 and a 24-bit mask. Oh, and of course I need to do my encapsulation first. So encapsulation is going to be .1Q. If you don't know what .1Q is, it's 8021Q, and that's the VLAN tagging encapsulation that we could use. So encapsulation .1Q, and this sub interface is going to be used for VLAN 10. And IP address 192.168.10.1 with that 24-bit mask. I'd also like to create another sub interface. So interface Giga Ethernet 00.20. I'm going to use that for my VLAN 20 sub interface. So encapsulation .1Q, and this one's going to be used for VLAN 20. The IP address that I'm going to give it is going to be 192.168.20.1. 255.255.255.0. And there we go. Only other thing that I'm going to need to do here is do a no shutdown on the physical interface. So on the interface itself, I'm going to do a no shutdown. You should remember, if you've done a little bit of Cisco work, that by default all these interfaces are closed, so we need to open them up. There we go. So that's that. There we go. Change state to up. We like that. So everything is up. We should be good to go. I was having a bit of a problem with the duplex issue earlier. Believe it or not, the switch that I was using was running half duplex. And the router, of course, wants to run a full duplex. And so that gave me a bit of a problem, but I don't see any syslog message here, so we should be good to go. Okay. So let's go into my switch and notice that. There we go. My solar putty just brought up a new tab for me, right? So there's my router, there's my switch. Kind of a nice, it's a nice way not to have a whole bunch of windows open, although sometimes it really is necessary. And here we go. And here you can see the message that I'm getting. It was right there. So I'm getting a duplex mismatch. So I'm getting the same thing as before on my Giga Ethernet 00. Okay, so let's fix that first. And this is not a normal situation. Giga Ethernet actually doesn't run in half duplex. So this is not a normal situation at all. This is more of a, there's my message again. It's going to keep popping up on my screen over and over again. This is really a Gns3, and this particular layer 3 switch that we got running, which is great, because believe me, it took a long time. In fact, I think I'll give a shout out to Leonardo, who did a lot of work finding the layer 3 switch and getting it running for us. So there you go. So I'm just happy that it's working. Okay, so let me get into that Giga Ethernet interface. Again, I'm on my switch. And so my problem here is my duplex mismatch. So let me see. I don't think I'm going to be able to do this, but anyway, I think it's going to give me some error messages. So let's go duplex full. And the auto negotiation is enabled, so I can't change the duplex. And so it's going to be no negotiation. And I wish I could remember this command, but you never use it. So no negotiation. Oh, let's try that. There we go. And now I should be able to duplex to full. There we go. So now it's full duplex and it's going to stop. Again, this was just a minor annoyance more than anything else, really, to get this up and running. Okay, so I'm still in that Giga00 interface. As you guys know, this should be a trunk, right? So I'm just going to make this a trunk. So switch port mode trunk. Oh, and of course now it's telling me that I can't do this because the interface is set to the encapsulation set to auto. So let's do encapsulation. Crazy command that we don't normally use. So I think it's going to be .1q encapsulation. Definitely not what I want. Yes, the beauty of not remembering the commands off by heart. Huh? No, don't tell anybody I said that. But, okay, what's it going to be? As I just scroll through all these commands, I'm looking for the one that's going to stick in my brain. Okay, so let's try